Hello people, welcome to the first episode of Pure Evil. In this series, we're going to be looking over different types of criminal cases. For the most part, we'll be looking into more obscure ones. And let me tell you all right now, the case we are taking a look at today can't even be described as obscure. It's just way more than that. I really wouldn't have any words to truly describe it, but all I know is you're definitely going to want to hear about it, because once I heard about it, I just really couldn't believe it. This story has two main characters. These two characters were at once lovers, but one of them was going to attempt to arrange something that is nothing more than an act of pure evil. Allow me to introduce you guys to Michael Stanley and Dalia Dippolito. These two met each other when Michael was still married to a previous spouse. However, they both fell deeply in love. Well, I guess one of them did. The other one had different motives with falling in love with the other, but you know, that was unknown to the other person. Regardless though, within 2 weeks, Mike filed for a divorce and he proposed and then later married Dalia. Their marriage seemed to start off fine, no immediate problems arose or anything like that, but something weird did start happening to Mike. For context, Mike during this story was on probation due to drug charges. One day his probation officer showed up at his door without saying anything to Mike first, which was weird because Mike usually got told when he was going to get a visit by a PO officer. The PO officer was there because he was given a tip from an anonymous source saying that he was selling drugs out of his house. The police then searched Michael's house and they found absolutely nothing. A similar thing would happen again the next weekend. Dalia and Mike went on a vacation together, and one day on the vacation, police were waiting for Mike in the parking lot, saying that they once again got an anonymous tip saying that Mike was selling drugs out of his car. Once again, after a search through Mike's car, the police found absolutely nothing. This would also happen another time. Yes, it happened again. This one was just a few weeks later, and him and Dalia were at a restaurant, and when they left that restaurant, police were waiting at the car saying that they had another anonymous tip saying, you guessed it, that Mike was selling drugs out of his car. This time, however, the police actually found something. They found a small bag of drugs inside of a cigarette pack inside of Mike's car. Mike denied that it was his and told the police that it was a setup. Due to all the tips recently that were just absolutely false, they sided with Mike and agreed that it had to be a setup and let him go. This is the point where Mike realized that the only person who knew where they were going for dinner was Dalia herself. And he also put together that she was the only one who could get inside of the car. So she must have put the drugs inside of the cigarette pack and then, you know, put in the anonymous tip. After he put it all together in his head, you know, the two of them were driving, Dalia was behind the wheel, and Michael asked if Dalia was the one who did this. Dalia, while driving, sped the car up to like 150 miles an hour and started screaming and like yelling at Mike for accusing her of something like this. And basically, you know, she just had a complete freak out and got very angry at Mike after it. And, you know, she also, of course, denied the accusation. The next day, she told Mike that she was pregnant to try to, you know, make Mike think about something different than this whole cop situation. The thing is though, Dalia wasn't actually pregnant and it was all just a lie to try to divert Michael's attention away from the whole entire situation. And I mean, it worked. Michael was very excited about having a new baby, and that's basically all he thought about from there on out. Well, Dalia would start doing some other weird things that same day. Dalia would text her ex-boyfriend and have him set up a fake call to Mike, where he would say that he was a lawyer. and in the call, he told Mike that if he moved his house to Dalia's name and had her name on the title instead of Mike's, that he would be able to shorten his probation sentence. The call must have seemed professional enough to Mike, because Mike ended up following through with the plan and signed his house away to Dalia. She then hit up another ex-boyfriend the same day and asked him to find a hitman for her to hire to kill her husband. Now, I don't know why she would think that asking another person to do this for them would be a good idea. I just don't think it ever would be. But I don't know, maybe she trusted this ex-boyfriend a lot or something, but she shouldn't have, because this ex-boyfriend didn't respond to the request at all that she gave, but instead he went to the cops with the information and let them know what Dalia was trying to plan. Once the cops were made aware of the situation, they would then set up a fake hitman to pose as the one that the ex-boyfriend hired for Dalia. Dalia was told to meet the hitman at a parking lot and, you know, go inside of the car and organize this with him. So Dalia got into the car and sat in there and talked to the fake hitman, and she requested that the hitman killed her husband. So yeah, to sum that up, Dalia was requesting a hitman to kill her husband, but in reality, she was actually asking an undercover cop to kill her husband. But not only was she talking to an undercover cop, meanwhile thinking, you know, she was talking to an actual hitman, she also was being recorded the whole time with a hidden camera inside of the car. Here's some footage from the interaction she had with the quote-unquote hitman. The following footage may be found disturbing to some viewers.
Hey.
We're staying in here, right?
All right, yeah.
Okay.
I'm gonna tell you how I'm gonna do it and when exactly it's gonna be done. All right, after I talked to you today, you know, this phone, garbage.
Okay.
You won't be able to get a hold of it. You know what I'm saying? I just want to make sure that, you know, it's what you want. Sure you want to kill this dude.
How soon can we get everything going?
Well, it's up to you.
I mean, I need it done like this week, but like my understanding of everything was that like, you know, I was gonna give you what I gave you, and then that was everything. Until after the fact, and then after the fact, I guess you were gonna come and like find me or whatever. I mean, I'm good for it. Like, it's not like I don't have it or anything. I mean, I know not to fuck around with you. You know certain things, whatever. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you obviously know where I'm at.
I could get it done by Wednesday if you want me to. You understand? But I gotta do my homework. You know,
right.
I gotta, you know exactly where the place is and how to get out of there, how to get in and out. You understand what the neighbors are. I gotta call the cops. You know, report a shooting to see how fast they get to that location. There's a lot of stuff I gotta do.
Okay.
That's gonna cost me a lot of money. Between now and when it's done, you know, you're not gonna have an option to change your mind. Even if you change your mind, you're not talking to them.
There's no changing. No, there's no like. I'm determined
Definitely
already. I'm
do
positive, like
okay.
5,000% sure. Like
Okay.
around 6:30, 7 o'clock. He
Yeah.
always walks the dog in the morning.
Okay.
He walks the dog across like over where the lake is, and our door is always unlocked.
I'll be in the house by 6:30 Wednesday morning. All right.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much, and I guess.
I mean, as you guys just saw, the police at that point had undeniable proof that Dalia was trying to hire a hitman here. She had the full intention to kill her husband through the hire of a hitman. The police would take Dalia into custody 2 days later after the car meeting she had with the hitman. Because in the car, she was under the impression that Mike would be killed in 2 days. The police set up a fake killing of her husband at her house, which is, you know, what she was expecting because she thought that the hitman was going to kill her husband in 2 days. But in reality, you know, Mike was completely okay, and he was told about what his wife had planned, and he was very well aware of the whole entire situation. But regardless, the police ended up getting Dalia into their custody. At that point, though, she thought that she was just being questioned about who might have killed her husband. You know, she thought that this was real, that the hitman actually went through with it, and that her husband was dead at her request. You know, she thought that she was seen as innocent to the police officers. Little did she know that the police would later show all of the proof that they had on her, and they would take her into jail. Now, this is where the case gets very, very confusing. No, I don't know if anything so far has sounded confusing to you, perhaps. I mean, this whole entire case is just confusing overall, but this is where it just doesn't make any sense to me at all after this point. So after being in custody, she had to go through trials, of course, to get her prison sentence and, to be found whether she was guilty or not guilty of the charge. Dalia was in the police's custody for 20 months before her trials began, but regardless, after 20 months of her being in custody, the trials did start. The first trial she had for her defense, or her reasoning behind everything that happened, was that Mike was a fan of reality TV and that he just wanted to be on TV, so he made up the whole murder for hire hoax and, just did all this to try to get on TV. Which is insane, right? That is a crazy defense that doesn't make any sense at all, especially considering what the police and all of us already know about this. I mean, the police have all of the evidence to back up their case, that Dalia wanted to kill her husband. And she's just trying to pass it off as her ex-husband Mike wanting to be on TV. A month later, she was found guilty of solicitation to commit first-degree murder, which basically means hiring someone to kill somebody else, which was her hiring a hitman. She was sentenced to 20 years. However, a month later, the sentence ended up being appealed and rejected on a technicality. This meant she would await another trial for her sentencing, and she was not yet sentenced to 20 years in jail. She was somehow able to get on house arrest rather than staying in the police's custody, like in a prison. But yeah, she was able to stay on house arrest for 6 years while awaiting her trial. Now, this next trial she goes on is just insane, right? Like, she comes up with the craziest defense ever. You thought that first defense was insane? Wait until you hear this next one. But before we hear about this next trial, I did just want to remind you guys that Dalia here hired a man to kill her husband. And so far, all she had to do to pay for that was to stay in her house for 6 years. She probably was even able to leave her house occasionally because usually house arrest, grants stuff like that. But I just don't understand how this was ever a thing. She tried to get her husband murdered and she just got to stay home for a few years. Anyways, I'll let you all know about this new defense that she came up with for her second trial. Dalia and her attorney went with the story that the police department that arrested Dalia did everything as part of a skit, and they say that the police department manufactured the crime as a whole just so they can get fame. They also say that the undercover police officer in the car who posed as a hitman threatened Dalia and made her say what she said. Yeah, I really don't know who would buy a story like this. That is so insane. But in news articles and interviews and stuff like that, the attorney and Dalia were just completely running with the story. They were very confident with it, which is just insane to me. But luckily, the courts didn't buy this ridiculous story, which is expected, of course. I mean, that story is just so absurd. But they gave her a sentence which also just doesn't make any sense to me at all. They sentenced Dalia to 16 years in prison. Yeah, that's it. She had the full intention of killing her husband. She was going to go through with the plans. She sat down with who she thought was a hitman and she hired him. And now after all of that, she will be completely free by the age of 50. Maybe it's just me, but that just seems like such a short sentence for what she did. It should have been much, much longer in my opinion. She deserves a way bigger punishment than that. I also still can't believe that she was put on only house arrest for 6 years after what she did, just because she had to wait for a trial. She was basically free at that point, not suffering any true consequences. Anyways, that was the case of Dalia Dippolito. There's a lot more to hear about this story. I kind of just summarized it for this video. I did get a lot of the information from a YouTube channel called JCS Psychology. I really do enjoy his videos, and I saw his video on Dalia, and I just thought that it was so absurd that I had to talk about it here on the the channel. But regardless, make sure you guys do go check out the original video on this that I took inspiration from. It will, of course, be linked down below in the description. If you guys did enjoy this video, make sure you do like the video and subscribe. It would help me out so much, and I would honestly appreciate it so much as well. Shout out to all of my channel members listed down below in the description, as well as the names you see up on the screen, especially AceWoman and Ace for being in the Patrick tier, and Sillystring and Mr. Doctor 73 for being in the Spongebob tier. I really do appreciate your guys' support so much. You're what keeps this channel going. If you guys did want to see some other videos that I've made, there will be 2 playlists up on the screen right now. One is about entitled Karens, and the other will be the Pure Evil playlist. Whenever more episodes are uploaded, it will be right there. Anyways, I've been KeidBoi, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye!